Hey guys, this is Backlog Gaming back with another top 5 video for you today. Today we are going to be covering Final Fantasy VII, the HD remake that they are doing with Squaresoft. So I'm going to start with my number 5 choice. My number 5 is going to be that I want them to use the Shinra technology system. Now this is a system that streams from a supercomputer to the individual system. From there, they can render areas larger than Skyrim. Now, I want this to be used for the open world areas in Final Fantasy VII, to where we're exploring from one area to the other, going from one town to the other. I wanted to feel like a longer distance to kind of get a more realism feel for it. How we kind of saw this type of feeling was with the Final Fantasy 15 demo that they recently had, to where the open world actually felt somewhat open with the monsters that were in it and the area that your character took up. So instead of doing the top-down view, the bird's eye view of the continent where you're just running through trees and grass and whatnot, more of it be, a third person behind the shoulder, where you're actually like running and interacting in the woods and grass and mountains and whatnot. I think that would be something that they could redo on it that wouldn't actually ruin anything from the game itself, but actually make it better and more immersive. My number 4, that is going to be 100% voice acting. Now, I want the Japanese voices to be available with English subs. I also want English voices to be available with obviously other language subs. I feel like in this day and age, the proper remake should have good voice acting alone for every character. Every interaction that you have with a character should be voice acted. Anything that was text-based in the previous game obviously should be voice acted at this point. But done very, very well and not half-assed at any means. Doesn't matter who the character is, it needs to be on par. The third thing that I want to see out of the Final Fantasy VII remake would be an instruction manual. This is something that constantly we hardly ever get from companies anymore. That is very frustrating to me. I really think that if you're going to be doing a remake of a game that came out in PlayStation time, when I had my first edition of Final Fantasy VII, I remember flipping through the instruction manual tons of times to look at characters, to look at artwork, to look at anything that you could get more out of the game. I remember looking at the actual case itself and looking at the artwork on the case. I mean, this is something that I think is a nice little touch that you could do essentially to kind of bring that nostalgic back to an individual of the original. Number 2, that is going to be a Final Fantasy VII Collector's Edition. Now, in this Collector's Edition, there's a couple things I would like to see. Maybe a statue, art book, steel case, behind-the-scenes video of how it was made. Essentially, I would also like to see kind of a different look overall to the actual game case itself that the case is actually inside of. Statues can range from anything from Red 13 to Cloud to maybe his sword to the Buster sword, or Barrett or Tifa or Ares or Sephiroth. Anybody would do. That would be iconic. I want it to be high quality. I don't know if a lot of you ever seen the Guild Wars 2 statue in their collector's edition. That one I was fairly pleased with when I bought it. As you can see, it is right over here if you guys have never seen it before. This individual is Ridlock. Now, he plays a key role in Guild Wars 2, but I feel like something of this quality is not hard to make for Squareenix. Essentially, if a company like ArenaNet can do it, you sure as hell can do it too. So I wouldn't mind seeing something crazy, off the wall type of statue that would look pretty cool and be on a nice base and everything. So that's one thing I would really like to see in a collector's edition. Another thing that I essentially want out of this remake is I want it to be, and this is my number 1, a Final Fantasy VII collection. Now, what I mean about this is I want to have essentially every aspect of the Final Fantasy VII universe remastered, either in HD or remastered in the sense of Blu-ray, however you guys want to do it. But essentially what I want to see is Final Fantasy Crisis Core in HD. I want to see the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I also want to see Final Fantasy VII the original. I also want to see Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus HD Remake. I also want to see the anime that they had focused around Final Fantasy VII in HD Blu-ray, and finally, but not least, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children in Blu-ray. Now, I would want to see all of that, so it's completely redone, completely revamped, and it's a collection as a whole. Now, I do have some hope of that, depending on how Squareenix did the Kingdom Hearts remixes, to where those include all three games on the first one, and then on the second one they released, it had the other 3 games. So I do have somewhat of a hope that they will do this with the Final Fantasy VII collection. The only thing I could see them doing is maybe splitting it out just to sell more copies, essentially. But I really hope if they're going to do it big, have everything on there that pertains to the Final Fantasy VII universe, and really make it something worth your money. Packaging wise, I want it to be prestigious, but I want the collector's edition to at least be available to everybody. Not just, it's sold out really fast. Like, don't make it super rare. I mean, you guys did that with the Final Fantasy collection that you released. Very, very limited release. I think there was only 1,000 made, which is ridiculous. Essentially, don't be allergic to money, Square. People are going to buy this. Okay, they're going to want to see what you redid with it. Now, I am seeing, every time Square Enix makes an announcement, I do see that the gaming community and large fans of Final Fantasy VII kind of grab their pitchforks and walk off. Essentially, what I say to those individuals is, hey, look, this is all on paper. I'm pretty sure if the game is going to fucking suck, Square Enix is not going to pump it out. What they are going to do is take it back, tear it down from the ground level up, and rebuild it. You've seen it with Kingdom Hearts 3. You've seen it with Final Fantasy 14, their MMO, that they had completely tore down and redid. If it does not fit what they are looking for and what they are going for, they are going to get rid of it. They understand how important this remake is to their fans, that they're not just going to fucking slap HD on the box and then pump it out the fucking door. They are going to do it correctly. They are going to do it to their standards. You're starting to see Square Enix really be this company that's not your typical Ubisoft or EA, where they just slap HD on the fucking box and hand it to you as a remake. They are essentially making sure that their games are works of art. They are trying to perfect themselves. They are trying to return to their glory days. This is what they are going for. Back to their roots, the traditional RPG genre. Now, essentially, should they do this right? Yes, they should. They owe that to their fans. They owe that to the original creators of this game, that this essential remake needs to be done correctly. They understand that if they mess this up, it's going to be a large backlash. So when everybody hears an announcement that they're going to change this or change that or manipulate this, they take it to the 10th extreme and essentially rage at anybody that tries talking any common sense. Wait for them to finish the game. When it is released, if it sucks, feel free to criticize them for it. They deserve it. If they release it and it's fucking good, and you sat there and criticized them throughout the whole development cycle, you're going to look like a fucking idiot. So that's my 2 cents about the Final Fantasy VII HD remake that they are doing, essentially. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. I like to own everything Final Fantasy related when it comes to gaming. My collection is not complete, but it is close. Essentially, I will be adding the Final Fantasy VII remake to that list. Just essentially that Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorites of the series. Now, I still have yet to play all the series, so that could potentially change in the future. But it is one that I hold in the highest regards because it is the first one that pulled me in when I was a child. So, essentially, guys, that was my top 5. Quick recap. I want them to use the new Shenmue technology for the open world. Number 4, 100% voice acting. with Japanese voice acting with subtitles if you want that option. Also in English if you don't want that option. Number 3 is it includes an instruction manual. Number 4 is that there's going to be a collector's edition that's readily available. That would include a statue, art book, steel case, a making of the game, and like a making of the game Blu-ray behind the scenes features, maybe even a soundtrack. That would be great. Then from there, the Final Fantasy Collection, again, I want that to include Final Fantasy Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII HD Remake. I want it to include the original Final Fantasy VII. I also wanted to include Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. I also wanted to include the anime that Final Fantasy VII did, and essentially Advent Children that Final Fantasy VII was also part of. So the full collection. Everything remastered, everything in Blu-ray quality. I want physical disc for stuff. I don't want the Final Fantasy VII original to be a download voucher. I don't think that would be right. I think that needs to be on a disc. It's a normal CD disc. It's not going to be that hard to make. So I would really like to see that. Or you could even slap it on a Blu-ray disc and have it playable on PlayStation 4. That would be perfectly fine too. But essentially that's the top 5 reasons or things that I want to see in the Final Fantasy VII HD Remake. Now, if you guys have some other ideas, feel free to comment below. If you want to like and subscribe, if you want to see more videos like this, I will be doing more. Feel free, and I'll see you guys next time.